I mean, that was one of the great things about camp, that you had the option to do and try stuff.
They had started rumors. Townies are coming into camp. Townies are coming into camp. And people were really anxious at night. Kids were really anxious. Staff was really anxious.
I remember cooking London broil and hamburgers and hot dogs on the golf course.
Welcome to episode 9 of the One Mason Road Camp Tevya podcast. Today is February 16th, 2026. I'm Rob Goodwin. Our guest tonight was in Berea in 1969. Multiple generations of her family gone to Tevya. Rumor has it when she was assistant girls head counselor in 1975, she, not Edie Brown, coined the phrase, "It's a good drying day." Once a swim instructor, always a swim instructor. Welcome, Ina Meyer Portnoy. How are you?
Thank you, Rob. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. So we crossed paths at Tevya in 1974 and 1975. And if I had you as a swim instructor, I apologize.
That's okay. I'm sure you were great.
I probably was. No, I was terrible. I was terrible.
It's okay.
So, how did you end up going to Tevya? I think there's a story behand that, or maybe multiple stories.
One of my New Bedford friends, born and bred in New Bedford, had the chicken pox, and she had to go to camp late. I was at a day camp, which my 3 older sisters went to. Loved it, absolutely loved it. Wasn't even thinking about overnight camp. And I think my father and my friend Jana Eisenberg's father were in cahoots. And, I'm sure he wanted to show me camp because his older son went there and later the younger son. Anyway, so I can't believe I rode, 2.5 hours with my friend's parents. So anyway, my vivid memory, I don't really remember dropping her off, but I remember being in the dining hall. And there was a sign, I don't know if it was still there when you were there. There was a wooden sign made out of rusty nails that said, "Don't walk barefoot." Do you remember seeing that?
I don't remember that. No,
okay. I don't know when they got rid of it, but yeah. I'm sure there were other things that blew me away. Camp was in full session. I don't know if it was a weekend or 3 days in or whatever. I was 11 and I just came home begging to go. So I think my parents must have had that in mind, letting me go to go see it. And then I started the next summer. And it was, as you've talked about before, it was a full 8 weeks with visiting day and just letters. And of course, no phone calls and all of that. So,
well, there were phone calls, but we can't say when.
Okay. I know on birthdays.
Not in camp.
Okay. Anyway, and very funny. So our first year I'm an alum. I'm an older soph. They tell me I have to wait on tables. I didn't have a clue what that even meant. I had no idea. At the very first, I think it was the first night or maybe it was the next day. I had to wait on tables. And back then, and I know you and Karen talked a lot about it, but it was a very different system than what we do now. And I can tell you more about that. Going in, the whole deal, going into the kitchen, and I literally didn't know what I was doing. So, but apparently somebody led me along. And another thing that was really funny, that same year, I was in a play. I had no idea, probably till they opened the curtain, that it was for the whole camp. I didn't know.
Oh.
They just didn't fill me in. I must have been pretty naive or just didn't, I don't know, whatever it was. But I loved it from the second I was there. I was always a camper. I had gone to this, day camp that was fantastic. And it was on the ocean, not waves ocean, but choppy ocean. And I learned to water ski and row and sail like this. And the first time I water skied at Tevya, I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm on glass. So yeah, I just loved it all of it.
Yeah, and I can remember when I started in 1974, I was an older alum. And what blew me away was that we actually had Celtics players come to clinics.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm in the right place. If I'm, if the World Championship Boston Celtics have, players are coming in here, I'm in the right place.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. And then in 69, when I, and again, back then, no social media. The only way you kept in touch with camp friends was letters, which we did, and sealed them with sealing wax, which probably was something you didn't do. I think it was probably more of a girl thing. But yeah, a lot of letters back and forth. And a big thing for me was going to a close friend's bat mitzvah in Newton, taking a Greyhound bus. I don't think I would have let my kids do that at 12 years, 13 years old. And my parents were pretty, they were pretty conservative. But yeah, I took a Greyhound bus and went to Newton to my friend's bat mitzvah. And, there might have been, I don't know if there were one or two other camp friends there. It wasn't like it was from when my kids were at camp. And then she came to mine, that's a whole other story, which was not a big deal at all. But she did come to my house for the weekend. So that was special. And then did you have Danbury, Connecticut friends?
I don't
No,
remember if I did
Klebanows?
not.
Were any of the Klebanows? They're probably older than you.
Yeah. I mean,
So
there was a Danbury bus. So there were a lot of
Yes,
kids
there was
from
Danbury
Danbury.
bus.
Yeah.
So, and then I remember going to Danbury, probably again by bus, to go to the Danbury Fair with my Tevya friend. So, yeah, there was a whole family that came. I think it was cousins, 2 different families from Connecticut. There was a bunch of kids from Connecticut, which was great, from Danbury. So it was all good. But just to backtrack a little bit, my parents knew about Tevya because one of my sister's best friends was a Davidow. Her brother married Aaron's daughter. So there was that connection. I know at some point my sister Eileen considered going to work as a counselor, but I don't know the exact story, but it didn't happen. She's 8 years older than me. So I know that didn't happen. So I know, my father used to play golf with my friend's father, though I'm sure there was a lot of conversation before I was invited to go check it out. So it was great. And then beer a year, it was back then you voted for captains. They don't
Right.
do that now.
I know.
So I don't know if you know that. Yeah, okay, they
Yeah.
don't do that now. So I was quite shocked that I was chosen as a captain. And my co-captain was Janet Perlmutter Schwartz, who later became a director. But it was just amazing. Felt like I was always fairly quiet growing up. And Tevya, just like it does for a lot of people, it just brings out a lot of, a lot of special things about individuals, and they can shine at camp in very different ways than they do in an academic setting.
Right.
Or with their hometown friends. And there were a few of my hometown friends that I was, in camp with, and I think we were closer at camp than even at home. So it was special, and we
Sure.
shared that. Yeah.
With me, there
So
was
it's
a
great.
split between home and camp as far as people. I mean, there were kids from Worcester, but not many.
Right.
Many. So it was
Right.
largely a split.
Right.
And there
Right.
was there were no off-season get-togethers or reunions or
No,
anything like that. There was nothing. There was nothing.
No,
There was
it was,
nothing.
letters, occasional
Yeah.
phone calls, but yeah, that's all it was. Reading your Kalenu over and over again with all those signatures, which was so special. And I was so surprised when my kids were there that they didn't get the Kalenu until much later. I don't know when that changed, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So
then,
it was just,
so you were one of Phyllis's girls a couple of years after that, right?
yeah,
Oh, by the way,
One
you
ye-
waited on tables because there were no CITs, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And everybody rotated through, but why they picked older Soph right at the beginning of very beginning of the summer with no training. You'd go up there and they would just tell you what to do. And it was, walking in and out of the kitchen. But again, it was a learning experience like everything else at camp. You just grow exponentially by all the things that you learn and do at camp.
And those
You know.
kitchen boys were scary, weren't they?
I guess so. I would have to think and remember who. I don't know if I remember who was. I kind
Yeah.
of think I know who was
Yeah.
in the kitchen. If some of them were in the kitchen, no, they just going in. I think the scariest thing was going in and out the wrong door. Those
Right.
revolving. Those no, what would you call them? Those doors that open both ways. That was a little scary. So yes, but yeah, but it was just. I mean, I just loved every second of it. And we didn't use the term back then, 10 for 2. Which is, I don't know if that was part of when you were there or not.
Not really.
Not
No.
really. I don't know,
No.
because I know when my kids went, my oldest son went, his first year was 90. 90, I knew this before, 95. But they always talked about living 10 for 2, and then even more so through the years. So yeah, things just kind of evolved. But how I got back to Tevya.
So there were summers where you didn't go, or
No,
one
just
summer?
one.
One.
Just
Okay.
one. Oh, 69, I was in Beria. 70, you could go to Tel Noah. And I believe Karen talked about this. You could be what's called a CAT, a counselor, a counselor aid in training, whatever it stood for was a CAT, not a CIT. They called a CAT. And I didn't want to go to another camp. So two people, one being Janet or Mother Schwartz, did go, and one other friend. I didn't even think about it. And the summer of 71, maybe 2 weeks before camp was starting, 2 or 3 boys that had been in Tel Hai, when I was there, came to New Bedford to visit me. And I don't know, maybe they came by Greyhound bus too. Because, how we weren't, we didn't have license. You didn't have a license yet at that point. So I don't know. But they came to visit. Must have been through a letter, maybe a phone call. They decided to come visit. And they told me that only one person was in the office and I should try to work in the office. I said, why would I go? I was only there for 3 years. There were people who were there for 6, 7 years. I'm not going to do that. So, dropped. That summer, I was voluntarily teaching swimming. That was my job for the summer. But my niece, who's 5 years younger than me, Debbie Jacobs, was going to Tevya for her first summer. And my sister and brother-in-law said, why don't you come for the day? And I was talking to a friend who went to Matapanai. We were supposed to go to the beach the next day. It was going to be 85 degrees. She said, don't be crazy. We've got all summer to go to the beach. Go see your camp. I drive 4 or 5 hours to go back to my camp. Okay. So I went up to camp. I guess I walk in the office. I didn't feel like I really knew Phyllis. I walk in to say hello to the girl working there who was in Iberia. And Phyllis said, can you type? I said, no, not really. She said, it's okay. We'll fake it. Go speak to Aaron. And to me, Aaron was godlike. And I have something funny I'll read to you after. But, that was kind of scary. So I don't know. I went to his cabin. Maybe Phyllis called ahead and said I was coming. He sits me down. He said, okay, your first responsibility would be to the office, to Phyllis, canteen, mail, the phone, etc., typing, etc. Said, you will get paid $75 for the summer. Well, that was $75 more than I was making.
Sure.
Voluntarily teaching swimming. So he said, but you'll have a bunk. And I need your answer. You need to be back here in 3 days. Now, this is the first day of camp. I had no orientation. There was no prep when you were in Beria and Tel Hai to, what's it going to be like to be a counselor, to be a kitchen boy? You only know what you saw, but, those years you were pretty self-absorbed in what your group was doing. You weren't really paying attention. At least I don't think I was paying attention to how much work it was to be a counselor. So I guess I went to visit, Kineret, Beria kids that I knew, and I see Karen. And I told her what happened. And she said, oh, my God. She said, you've got to come here. Call your mother. Tell her to pack your trunk. Don't leave. Well, anyway, I don't remember the ride home. I don't remember packing. But I know I came back to camp. And they gave me Kineret. So these girls were 3 years younger than me. They had been on my team. They were a fabulous group of girls. And, whose bed did they spend a lot of time on? Mine. But it was a fabulous experience. It was just, Phyllis, as scary as she seemed, she was a sweetheart. Until you really knew her, she was such a sweetheart. She really was. And back then in 71, she said, I've been here for 100 years. And when I called camp in 1994 to find out about coming for a tour to bring my kids, especially my older son, again, she answered, hello. She always had a very distinctive hello when she answered the phone. Something interesting that happened when I was in the office that summer was a time of Vietnam. So I'm really, really dating myself, of course. But someone on maintenance who had a little difficulty expressing, talking, he said to me, would you please call? I need to find out. There was a lottery. And you had to call in and find out, according to your birthday, what number you were. And if you would get called to go to Vietnam. And, he gave me his birthday and I made the phone call to whoever it was. And, you give the date. I don't know if you weren't punching buttons back then. It was still rotary dial. So I don't know if I might have talked to a person. And I remember he came in, he said, what'd you find out? I said, you're number 11. And that was scary.
I'll
So I
bet.
don't think he ever went to Vietnam, but just making that phone call was, I don't know, it was very gripping. was very gripping. So, I had a wonderful summer. I had a fabulous group of campers and enjoyed being in the office. And it was, it was great. It was great. And then I wouldn't have left, except I got married in 76. So I'd maybe still been a counselor all these years.
Sure,
No,
sure.
I don't know. But anyway, it's, yeah, so I spent 4 years, and to go back a little bit, in Berea, I was a water safety aide for the head of the waterfront, who was Bobby Zager. And I don't know, do you know the names? Do you know the Zagers, or probably not, because they were
I-
gone before you started?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Bobby and Ronnie were twin brothers, but, and we're both at camp for like 11, 12 years. And hopefully they'll come on for a podcast, or one or both. You'll get to talk to them, I hope. But I was his assistant because I had passed advanced swimmers, and somehow there was a water safety aid thing, which doesn't exist anymore. And he was really my mentor for, teaching swimming, and, never stopped.
Sure,
Never
sure.
stopped since then. So yeah, it was all good. But I want to talk about color war for a second.
Sure, sure.
When you burnt the rope for the Apache relay, well, when you burnt whatever, what was it? Tell me, because then I'll,
It was a rope.
I want to just compare. What was it?
A rope.
How'd you build the fire?
Not well.
No. What did you use for the fire? Or
We
what
had-
did you use to hold?
Well, we sent kids from our team out to get wood and kindling and all that.
Right,
and
right.
Yeah.
Right. So it was literally a branch with a string, a little string.
Oh, these
Is that what you
these were
had?
broomsticks, I think. I think they were
Okay.
broomsticks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe there was something more sturdy.
Yeah.
But what was in the middle? Was it a
Uh,
string? Do you
Yes.
remember?
Yeah, it was a string.
A
yeah.
string. Okay. So fast forward many years, my kids go to camp. Wonderfully, they were all team captains. They used, I think, 6-foot 2x4s on the ends with a rope this thick that they had to burn.
Wow.
Very bonfires,
Yeah, oh, yeah,
like on
yeah.
the Bogue Field.
Right.
Very different. And each of my kids had the 2x4s. The team signed it. And
Wow.
they were in their closet until just a few weeks ago when I had to donate a whole lot of stuff. But yeah. So it was funny how it's like, oh my God, I can't believe they do that on the dry Bogram field with so much fire. But they did, and everybody was safe, and it was fine.
Well, I think, like, when I was head of athletics, I think the athletic team is what set the ropes up, from what I remember.
Sure.
I don't think it was
Oh,
maintenance or
maybe.
anybody like that.
No,
I don't think.
no, right, they probably did, or unless the team
Yeah.
captains, or with the team captains.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I just remember what it looked like with the little string, and then comparing it to
Right,
what was
right.
done years later. So,
And
yeah.
imagine being last to burn the rope.
right,
The first year there were 4 teams.
right.
Last.
Your last, oh no, I'm sorry. And the year, I think all 3 years, well, at least I think I definitely know my beer year, it was only Negev and Galil. And then that year was Aaron's, maybe it was his 60th or 65th birthday, but he decided that we had to make up a birthday song. And that was included in the Song Fest, in addition to a cheer and an alma mater. And then we all got 45 records. I think the whole camp must have gotten them, a record of Songfest.
Sure.
So I don't know what happened to mine. My parents moved when I was a freshman in college, and I didn't get to help them out with packing up. Years later, Janet was girls' head first she was girls' head council, then she was director. She gave me one of the records, so that was pretty cool.
Nice.
So there was another funny one that my niece, Debbie Jacobs, who I mentioned, she's an ophthalmologist, and she was treating John Cotlier's mother, and Sue Cotlier. Sue Cotlier was my counselor. I was really good, close friends with John Cotlier. And Debbie said to me, this is many years ago, she said to me one day, she said, this is my patient, but she said, I have something that's been sitting in my garage. Maybe you want it. It was the old blue Berea sign. They were different. It was almost kind of had like a shield shape. I don't know if they were there when you were there, but it was kind of a bright light blue with white writing. It's
Okay.
a Berea, or Berea Aleph, Berea Bet. Well, she gives it to my niece. My niece gives it to me, and it was not my Berea, but it was Janet's Berea. So when she was director, when my kids were there, I brought her the sign for her to keep it.
Nice.
And that's when she gave me the 45 of
Sure.
the Songfest. Yeah. So kind of funny. A lot of it just continues to circle around.
Right, right.
And this is a original. I don't know if it's original, but it's a Tevya beanie
Oh,
from
yeah,
back
that's
in the.
old. That's an old
See, that's
style.
very old. That's
Yeah.
very old. Yep. I got it after camp from a camp boy afterwards, not at camp, but
Sure,
after
sure.
camp. And I've kept it all these years. So
Well, the only thing I have is this button that was made in arts and crafts 50 some years ago with
right.
Larry Chaikin. He had a button
Yep.
maker.
Yep.
And I have
Yep.
a keychain which looks very similar. That's all I have.
Okay.
That's it.
Right.
That's
Right.
it.
Well, this is all I have except other stuff from, when my kids were there.
Right, right.
So yeah. Yeah. Because
So
there wasn't stuff when we were there.
nothing.
There wasn't stuff. It's just,
No.
I mean, now the counselors have to wear staff shirts all the time. So it's just very different.
Right,
I
right.
mean, I don't think it was the first year. One of the years we got a Tevya shirt to wear on visiting day. That was very exciting because there was not all this apparel.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, I can
So,
remember
yeah,
the staff
yeah.
shirts. I mean, they used to be a white T-shirt with, navy blue trim around the neck.
Yep. Yep.
That was
Yeah.
it.
Right. Right. Right.
Then we had the polos, the powder blue polos.
Well,
Those
no,
were
not
really
when
nice.
I was there. Not when I was there.
They weren't.
So,
They weren't
yeah.
that nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you wear them just on trip days?
Yeah. Trip days, game day. That was about
Game
it.
days. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And it wasn't even required to wear it on game days. It was.
Okay.
I don't think it's required.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. And then I had friends who went to camps that they had all they wore was a camp uniform. I guess that was easier, but I thought that's kind of boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's, it does minimize the packing. That's for sure.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah.
So you crossed over between Aaron Gordon, over to essentially to Danny Fishbane. And I was wondering, like, what can you remember that was so different? Like, I know Karen said to a degree, it was like the Army, and she said they strip beds and that kind of thing. And I don't remember any of that.
You mean you mean when Aaron was director?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he ran a really tight ship.
Right. Right.
Although I have to read, so I've saved this for all these years. It's from after the 50th reunion and was not written by me. It was written by the person I was in the office with, who back then, she was an amazing writer. And, we hadn't seen each other. We connected at the 50th reunion. She wrote.
So wait,
I
so
think she
for
was
the
writing
for
actually,
the
she was from Worcester. She was from Worcester
Okay.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
So for the young kids, the 50th was what, 1989?
You do the math.
Yeah, because the 40th was the
Of course,
40th was
right,
79.
Of course. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was living in Pennsylvania, and I came up for the reunion. But one of my still dearest, closest friends is Nancy Levitan Porvu, and she's a year younger than me, but big kudos to Nat. Yeah, and I know you talked about it a little bit with Karen, but mixing the age groups at the tables and getting to meet, kids of different ages. And we sat at the table together when she was in Canara and I was in Berea. And I guess we just connected. And years later, I guess it must have been my second or third year back at Tevya, we're sitting on the volleyball courts during orientation. And I get a tap on my shoulder. Hi, remember me? And the rest is history. I mean, we've stayed very close. So she, and when I moved to Pennsylvania for 9 years, and we kept in touch with the letter writing and the phone calls and everything. And she would keep me informed about different people in Boston and what was going on. So when there was the reunion, I came up and I stayed at her house, and we went to the reunion together. But this was an article. I'm just going to read a few excerpts from this article, which really speaks to camp. It's still, it's very pertinent today, but from the alumni who will be listening to this, the older alumni, it just has some really, really good pieces in it. So Tevya was the closest thing to heaven a socially oriented person could ever desire. 350 built-in playmates plunked down in a bucolic setting. Who couldn't have a good time spending days swimming, sailing, playing tennis, doing arts and crafts, or spending nights singing around campfires, swatting mosquitoes, going on treasure hunts, square dancing, or watching King Solomon's Mines for 10 years in a row? They probably stopped showing that movie by the time you were there. All those activities would have been meaningless, though, if a certain spirit hadn't permeated the place. Sorry, can't read this. a spirit of fellowship, sharing, family. Aaron Gordon, longtime director, set the tone, as did his almost all Ivy League staff. A bit of a martinet. Aaron looked like he just stepped out of the setting of The Bridge Over the River Kwai. I can picture him in khaki, baggy khaki pants and, probably not a t-shirt, collared shirt, whatever. So he didn't look collegiate. Let's put it that way. And we thought he ran the camp with British officer precision. Although Aaron is actually was a loving, dear man, he never let us in on his secret, for he knew just how much leeway to allow 350 boys and girls between the ages of 10 and 15, about zero. No Tevya camper from the 60s would ever forget him pacing the floor of the rec hall. I'm laughing because I can picture it. Of the rec hall with a ruler during socials, ensuring that we never danced less than 6 inches apart. Yeah, you remember that too?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We all grumbled at the strict Camp Tevya rules, but we didn't grumble terribly seriously. The rules made us feel safe. They also provided a challenge of how to break them without getting caught. Then, at the 50th reunion, turning the time back 10, 20, 30 years, the ghosts of the past appeared in real faces. Again, everybody out there who's, used to social media, you didn't see these people. Maybe on occasion, if you, arrange to get together. Faces a tad more lined, perhaps, attached to bodies not quite as felt. But they were familiar faces, much beloved faces, so many names, so much positive energy flowing that conservation, I should have made this bigger, was nigh impossible. We touched each other to make sure this was real and gasped and gossiped throughout the formal speeches and presentation. Then Aaron arrived, and 500 people gathered on the hot soccer field, cheered this elderly, sick man who had been our leader. And we found that despite his apparent frailty, Aaron could still make us laugh and cry. You thought I didn't see, and I think he wagged his finger. You thought I didn't see all of you counselors parading by my cabin at night. He poked his finger at us and laughed. But I did, and all of us who had been counselors who had sneaked around with members of the opposite sex cringed. Once again, we were 17 years old. I just thought the way it was written was just great.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. And Aaron was I think one year my bunk saying, I don't remember which year it was, might have been Connecticut. He must have walked in the back door and someone said, "Oh, it's only you, Aaron. We thought it was a man." Because we got kind of startled that someone came in the door. And it was just not that he visited the bunks very often, but, he must have. So it was, yeah. But he wasn't so scary once you got to know him. Same with Phyllis. So, but they were just that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and as I told Karen, I wasn't afraid of Phyllis. Going into the office was nothing that I wanted to do or had any reason to. Yeah.
I don't know that I ever had really before I worked there either.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Right. Doing canteen was fun, but it made you not want to eat candy because you were like stuffing all the bags with candy.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then we did packages and it was busy. We were busy in the office and yet it had to type stuff and I was, poking it out. So, did what we had to do.
Right. And then in 1975, you were assistant girls head counselor with Edie?
Yes. Yep. And she said it's a beautiful drying day. She and John Kaplan used to say that. That was, I know you were just joking.
Yeah.
But no, she didn't say that. But the only time that I really took over, other than making a few announcements here and there that I remember, was on her day off. And then I wasn't teaching swimming and I was behind the microphone and, did whatever I did. But so it's so different now because there's a head counselor for the Ols, the Bogues, and the Sophs and the Bogues. So it's completely different. And same with the director. Back then, the directors, they had a year-round job. They would teach. Aaron was teaching. Subsequent directors were teachers or had another job. And and then they worked at camp. And then when they changed it, it was very different. It was very different.
Well, I remember when I was assistant boys head counselor, it was planned. Well, it wasn't. It was unplanned the first summer because the boys head counselor at the time left midsummer, not for any bad reason.
Okay.
So the assistant boys head counselor was made the boys' head counselor, not that he wanted to do it. And then I was tapped to be the assistant boys' head counselor.
Right. Right.
And it
So
got me thinking.
did you have many responsibilities?
Not really. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
it was like you said, the announcements. I think I still did my athletic stuff, but they actually moved me to the CIT cabin second month from Tel Chai.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I
So,
was in Alanim for my third
Yeah.
time because I was right there, which that's not Alanim anymore because they've built newer Oh no, you
Right.
don't know. You haven't
No, I
been there,
don't
but
know.
they built more cabins. So yeah, that's not the older Sofs are literally where there was empty space next to the girls' head cabin. You'll see it when you go back.
Yeah, I will. So there was one day where I was in the CIT cabin, which is not the CIT cabin anymore, and I had
Right.
one of the rooms, and so when the boys' head counselor Kevin was on his day off, I had my alarm clock set. Well, it didn't go off, and the girls' area was calling over to the boys, the boys' heads cabin for I don't know how long. Just calling, and that phone's ringing. I know that phone's ringing and ringing and ringing. No one's picking it up.
Right.
Somebody woke me up, and so the first announcement in the boys' area that day was 5 minutes to line up, and you hear just screams.
Right.
But the worst part about it was trip day.
No. Oh no.
The whole camp was going to Hampton Beach.
Okay.
So when the boys' area where we finally made our way to the dining hall, the girls' area was just waiting for us. With a little bit of.
Did you have to make lunch to
Yeah.
bring with you?
I think we were a little bit late.
Not right.
But there was a round of applause, and I kind of walked in try not to make try to keep a low profile.
Right. Was that Kevin Richmond?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was his name was Kevin Rosen.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, he was there for.
I know
there for 1
Kevin
year.
Richmond was boys' head counselor
Yeah.
at some point.
Right.
I did not know him, but in 1976 we were co-advisors for an 8th grade group in Randolph, for 8th grade USY group in Randolph, and Barbie Stevens was one of my kids. So that was kind of cool
very
to
cool.
see her then. It was just I was driving from Waltham, and it was it was fun, but I only did it that 1 year. But, then I saw his name years later in a cousin's yearbook, a cousin's Kalenu. I went, Kevin Richmond, I was a USY advisor with him. So, yeah. There's a lot of coincidences. So many.
And another
so many.
Yeah, another coincidence is that when I was in college, a year later, I went to the University of Hartford, and they built the first set of apartments. So I got a 3-bedroom with 3 other guys. So we knew they were going to place 2 others with us. We had no idea who. And it turns out that they placed these 2 guys with us into the 3rd bedroom, and got to talking to them. And turns out that one of them was Kevin Rosen's brother, Gary.
Oh.
So we were roommates. My senior year. Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
So those coincidences
was
happen.
When my kids were there, for them to end up having kids of, people that I knew, which was great. So one year, my daughter, had on her name tag, and a father, I still don't know who it was, but a father said to her, or I guess my daughter said, well, my mom was a camper here. So whatever the conversation was, who was your mom? And he ended up telling her a story that he was very homesick. And this really nice counselor, apparently was me, sat on the stairs of the dining hall with him and calmed him down. And I don't know who it was, but I can visualize myself sitting on the dining hall steps during a meal, being called out. Could you please talk? Maybe it was when I was assistant girls head counselor. I'm not sure what year it was, but could you please talk to this camper? He's very homesick. So yeah, it was, I think all 3 of my kids had, people that I knew. And that was, so going back, having my kids go to camp, it led me into a whole nother generation. I didn't know what was going on really in the late 70s and 80s. I was very disconnected. I moved to Pennsylvania for 9 years, and, I was in close touch with Nancy and also Phil Drasner. And, it was snippets from them that I would hear. And I met got together coincidentally or somehow, maybe going to the 50th reunion, I met some people or re-met some people who lived near me and got together with a few of them. So that was kind of cool. But
Well,
yeah,
I can let you in on all these secrets from the late 70s and
yeah,
80s. Offline though.
okay,
Yeah.
all right,
So,
okay, yeah. You don't have to
and
tell me now.
yeah, and you had mentioned that you were close friends with Phil Drasner, and to say he's missed by all is obviously an understatement.
Right.
What can you share about Phil that people may not know, or some stories that you can remember?
Okay. Well, I mean, I can tell you a lot of things, but I want to tell you something that is pretty impactful that he did in later years. But I'll start with one of the first ones. The 75th reunion, he made wristbands, those rubber wristbands, white with blue writing that said Camp Tevya amid verdant woodlands. And I don't know how many he made. He made hundreds of them, had them made, 500, whatever. And he handed them out at the reunion, and he made sure that he had enough for every Birya and Tel Chai camper so that they got them because the reunions before camp started. So he made sure that there was enough to give to them. And I can't put my finger on it, but it's been hanging on my bulletin board ever since. Then at the 80th, he got very into doing a lot of stuff on his computer.
Oh,
And he made these amazing collages. This is one that I had. He made much bigger ones. I know he didn't even know, really didn't know the director, Mindy, but I think he gave her a large one. I think he was selling them. And then I think
okay.
he ended up giving them to some people. So I don't know what was happening at the reunion. He decided to try to sell some of them. And there were lots of different scenes. And it was his thing. It's what he wanted to do. In
Right,
fact,
right.
he had 2 dogs. I think the dogs, I know one was Birya. I think the
Birya.
other one was
Yeah.
Dahlia. Yeah. So, camp was his very special place. But in the years, I would say in the 2000s, he started, I don't know what year he started. Well, he did those bracelets. He did that. After that, or even in between, if, alum, former campers, counselors that he knew had a baby, he would be sending them gifts. He would make up these gifts and, wall hangings, various things that he did. I mean, I don't know what other people got. I saw what things he was putting together for my grandchildren. He consulted with me and, so he was sending those to people. And he was also making gifts in addition to those, after those bracelets, for all
Really?
the Birya and Tel Chai kids. He did hats. I think he did mirrors. He did backpack, small backpacks I could take to the beach with, take to the waterfront with you, just because it's what he wanted to do. It was just his thing. And even though he didn't know these kids, some of them may have been alumni, that he knew. He knew some of them. But that was just, he did it year after year, and he'd send up, dozens
Wow.
of these items for those campers because it was just something that he wanted to do.
Sure, sure.
Something he did for me that really blew me away. I moved to Pennsylvania in 1983. And when I moved, the only thing I was missing, no, let me correct that. I moved back to Massachusetts in 93. The only thing I was missing was 4 out of 8 Kalenos. Never had them. They must have ended up in a bottom of a bottle. We didn't lose anything else. I was minus 4 Kalenos. And of course, they were, at least 2 of the 4 were ones with all the signatures. Because you didn't do it as much when you were a counselor. Well, one day, several years ago, not that many years ago, I come home to a Gigunda package. Now, when Phil sent a package, he wrapped it like it was, you couldn't get into it. It took you 10 minutes to open it up. Tape upon tape. And yeah, so he made sure nothing got lost, nothing got dropped out, whatever. He copied the 4 Kalenos that I was
Really?
missing. Yes, including getting in touch with some of my former bunkmates, having them write me a little blurb and include
Really?
it. I mean, I get the chills even talking about it. It was just, I was going to show you, but I mean, some of them, they ended up being 2 to 3 times thicker than the original Kalena because of whatever stock he used or whatever. But can you imagine how painstaking, what a task that was
Sure.
for him? I mean, to do one would be a huge task.
Mhm.
So I now have them all, which was so special.
Yeah.
I mean, and he wrote me an incredible letter and yeah. So, and then my son Ben, when he was chosen or it was known that he was going to be director, he wrote Ben an incredible letter and just a little bit of advice, a lot of support. And at the dedication we had for the pavilion, the tennis pavilion in Phil's memory, I think he read that letter or at least talked about it. Because when he happened to get it, he was sitting on the wall that's right there. And it was just very meaningful. And it meant a lot to me to go back to when my kids finally got to see Camp Tevya, when we moved back from Pennsylvania. They'd heard about it. They heard about these people. Just all about camp. When we went into, I believe it was Connecticut, and they saw Ina Meyer, 68, written on the wall, they were kind of blown away. Like, this place is real, and you were really here. So yeah. So it was special for me. And when we went up to tour, who gave the tour? Phil. So they were like, you know this guy? And I hadn't seen him in so long. And on the tour with us was another family of someone I had been a counselor with. And we were chatting, and he was yelling at us to be quiet because he was trying to give the tour. And so anyway, Phil could be strict, but he could also be so wonderful and, kind and everything else. But so those kindnesses, and I'm sure there are so many stories out there from other people about things that Phil, I know there are some of it that he told me, some I've heard from other people. The other big thing that was so important to him was tennis, and he would
Big
make
time.
This is kind of, a little off the grid, but I don't remember who it was for, but he made a whole jacket with the person's photos on. And he had a whole tennis room. I mean, that might have been a picture. It was on his Facebook page that he had a tennis room and just,
because he met
that was his life.
Yeah, he met all these pro players.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he sure did. And he went to tournament after tournament after tournament. So, and someone was supposed to meet up with him, not long after he passed away. And, there was a plan. And so, so dearly missed. And you got to see the pavilion, and there's a beautiful plaque. And so it's really nice. And there was a lot of money raised.
Sure. He was boys head counselor when I was a camper. And he was not a boys head counselor when I was on the staff, which is my loss.
Right. He left for a number of years and then came back. Yeah.
But I remember one thing I do remember is, and he may have done this once, he may have done this a million times. It doesn't matter. Came back from it. I was a bogue, and he came back from his day off, and he started in the bogue area and went through every bunk to say hi, what's going on, and blah blah blah.
Yep.
And
that was what he did.
Who does that? That
was what he did.
Yeah.
He absolutely did. And before my older son started, I wrote a couple things you write a little blurb about your kid. And, I'm waiting probably close to a week, no letter. So I call camp. Hello. Phyllis answered the phone. Hello. And so I said, I just want to know, how's my son doing? And he can be kind of quiet, before he meets people and, until he gets to know people. Phil happened to be in the office. The first thing he says, I thought you weren't one of these types of mothers. I said, well, I'm not, but I just want to know how he's doing. And he said, I'm glad you wrote what he did. Well, I'm glad you wrote what you did, because I wasn't concerned about him the first few days. But that was it. He went in and talked to every camper. That was just the way he did it. I can't speak for, other heads, boys' heads, or, if they did anything like that or close to that, but that was what he did. Tevya was an enormous part of his life.
Right.
It was his family.
Yep.
Yeah. It was his family.
And the connecting that he did with Tevya families that maybe now I just saw this from Facebook, with parents and relatives of people who went to camp. He really reached out. I could tell he reached out to an awful lot of people.
Yeah, he did. He really did. But he moved to California, and he wanted to be director, and they wanted him to maybe move. And he asked me, would I go to the Tevya office at the time? It was in Ashland. And he said, if I needed, things faxed to me, would you help me? And, I said yes, but it didn't end up happening for him. And, he didn't want to move back. He really wanted to be director, but it didn't pan out. So,
Sure.
Yeah. And so that I was feeling concerned. Like, what was he going to think? Oh my gosh, now my son is in that place. But he wrote, as I said, the most wonderful letter to
Right.
Ben, wishing him all the best, and a very heartfelt letter. And that was Phil. That
Very
was Phil.
nice. Yeah. That
So,
was
yeah.
Phil. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was he gave I think it was at the 80th, Phyllis had passed away,
Mhm.
and he did a whole dedication to her, and there was a little ceremony, and it was really nice.
Sure.
So, yeah, yeah.
Very
So it
nice.
was good. Yeah, yeah. And just something that we didn't have. Sorry, I have a cat. Something that we I have a cat. I have two cats, actually. Something we didn't have. There's so much stuff. So these are
Yeah.
magnets. Have
I
you
got
seen
one of
magnets
those.
on?
Yeah.
You got one of those.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, there are magnets. They stick, some of them say mine, the one I have on my car says Tevya.
Mhm.
This is a Tevya alum, whatever. And then the kids, they end up giving the kids, stickers, didn't have it back, none of this back in the day.
No, nothing.
All kinds of
Nothing.
things. I have these two on my water bottle. And one of these. And then when my kids, I don't know if you got anything as a camper, but my kids had from Larry, a little wooden pencil holder with a sticker that said, I heart Tevya, with a pencil, just a little something.
Yeah.
So, that's, but it's totally evolved, of course, like
Right.
everything else
Right.
in our world, it has evolved to so much more.
Yep.
And the
Yep.
kids, I saw someone wearing a Tevya t-shirt that I really loved. One of the parents actually makes a lot of Tevya items. Yeah. So she does. I'm not sure exactly what she's doing right now, because I know they're also tied in with a camp, apparel company. But yeah, she made a lot. She made a lot of the items for the kids, ordering through her.
Nice.
So yeah, pants and sweatpants. And then what they do now for future campers, which I'm finally going to have third generation coming to camp this summer, which is very
Wonderful.
exciting. 2 grandsons. You can order a mystery box, like in time for Hanukkah.
I've seen that.
Yeah. So every year I think there's something different in it, whether it's sweatpants. They send a few things: sweatpants, shirt, sweatshirt, and stickers.
Right.
So it's great, and
Yeah.
and then there's all these meetups that to get the kids ready for camp. As I said, I went to camp. I'm sure my friend told me a little bit, but I don't think she told me that much.
Right.
And
Right.
now kids, they get to meet the director. They get to go for ice cream or pizza, and
Mhm.
there's try camp for a day the year when they're thinking of going, and it's great because it makes the kids comfortable, feeling ready, accepted and part of it before they're actually there. So I think that's really special. That's really special. I don't know exactly when it started, but I don't think it's been that many years, but it's great. It's
Sure.
great.
Sure.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
just throw them in, see what happens, right?
Right. Well, that was how it was back then,
Of
but
course.
it's not like that anymore.
Right.
But,
Exactly.
and there are, three heads of, of each group, or 6 actually, boys and girls. And there's a lot more staff than there
Yeah.
used to be.
Right.
And, I loved hearing Karen talk about OD.
Yeah.
That changed when my kids were counselors. They had to sit in the bunk. And I said, you have to sit in the bunk?
Yeah, that's no
Really?
fun.
How do you
That's
get
no
to
fun.
eat? Yeah. And I said, don't you get snack? So it's not like, did you go to the dining hall as a counselor at night to get
Sometimes.
leftover?
Sometimes.
Oh, we had it all the
Yeah.
time. All the time. There was always leftovers. There was loads of food. But our excitement back there was going out to do laundry,
Right.
going to Howard Johnson's to get ice cream.
Mhm.
Very different than now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we did things on days off. We went to a gunquit,
Mhm.
we ate lobster, and we went to, I don't know where, the White Mountains, and did different
Right.
things.
Yep.
When I found when my kids were counselors, they wanted to come home and be in air conditioning and eat some home cooked
Oh,
food,
that's
or
yeah.
different, just different. Because New Bedford was further, so was Worcester. But did you go home on days off?
Not
Do
often.
you remember going home?
Not
No.
often. No.
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 I loved having the kids at my house.
Mhm.
Loved it. Loved it. It was
Yeah.
great. It was great. That was a lot of fun. And then they got really close bar and bat mitzvah years, with a lot of back and forth and, going to each other's, and we had a lot of sleepovers. And then once they went to Israel, oh, that really cemented it. So,
Yeah, yeah.
spending 4.5 weeks and also with Telnoa and Pembroke, I mean, so special. Very, very special.
Right.
So, yeah. And we went on, John and I went on the adult door-to-door trip in 2016.
Very nice.
It was fantastic. Yeah. With some old
Yeah.
Tevya people, which was great.
Good.
And some other people. It was wonderful. And now there's going to be another trip. There was just a, recent survey sent out. If you're interested, and Mindy Gersten sent back that they're planning on having the trip, and I'm hoping to go again.
Good.
It was
That's great.
wonderful. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And when I went on the trip, it was led by Peter Abelo, who had been a counselor at Tevya in the 60s. And he made Aliyah. Now it's probably been over 30 years. 5 kids, and he and his daughter helped lead the trip. And he was fantastic. But just having that connection,
Mm-hmm.
was amazing.
Sure.
Yeah. And it was wonderful. So anybody out there who's considering going, it's really wonderful. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope it happens. I hope we get a great showing. And we had 25 people on our other trip, and it was just wonderful.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah. All good.
Well, it's been great catching up, Ina. I'm glad you were
Great
able to join
talking
me
you,
tonight.
Rob. Thank you. It's been fun to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you. So this concludes episode 9 of the One Mason Road Camp Tevya podcast. If you'd like to be a guest or have ideas for future episodes, you can reach me via Facebook Messenger, text me, or email me at info@onemasonroad.com. Please subscribe to the One Mason Road Camp Tevya podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can also listen at www.onemasonroad.com. Past guests have included, and this list is getting kind of long now, Mark Adelman, Matt Brand, Linda Schnall-Hill, Lynn Shapiro-Eisenstein, Scott Spar, Jeff Blasbog, and Karen Friedberg-Fast. And don't forget to join the One Mason Road Camp Tevya group on Facebook. Thanks again to Ina Meyer Portnoy for spending time with me tonight. Thanks for listening and watching, everyone. Keep in touch.